My parents took me to court for buying a house. Yes, my own parents. And yes, my own house. That was the sentence sitting at the top of the paperwork in my shaking hands. The sentence that didn't make sense. The sentence that, even as I stood under the fluorescent lights of the courthouse hallway, still felt like a line ripped from someone else's nightmare. Not mine. But it was mine. I remember the way the air felt stale, like even the building knew something unnatural was happening. I remember staring at the stamped seal on the document, the one that made everything painfully real. And I remember my father's voice, cold, steady, rehearsed, slicing through the confusion as if this was something normal parents did. "That house," he said, tapping the top page with 2 fingers, "belongs to your sister." My throat closed around a laugh that almost came out as a sob. My sister. The girl who had never worked a full month in her life. The one who still called me to pay her phone bill. That sister. I looked from him to my mother, hoping, stupidly, there was a misunderstanding, a joke, something. But my mother wouldn't even look at me. She just folded her arms and stared straight ahead like she was waiting for a dentist appointment, not participating in the most surreal betrayal of my life. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup, and somehow, I was the last one to know them. My name is Eloise. I'm the quiet one in the family. The one who learned early that speaking up only made things worse. The one who took the hits, the jabs, the "you're too sensitive" comments, because arguing with my parents was like arguing with a storm. You'd still end up drenched, exhausted, and unheard. But buying that little 2-bedroom brick house on Maple Street, that was the first time in my life I did something big for myself. I worked 2 jobs. I skipped vacations. I sold every piece of furniture I didn't need. I did everything right. And somehow, doing something right is what landed me in a courtroom facing my own family. My father stood tall, spine straight like he was defending a national honor instead of stealing his daughter's home. "Your sister needs stability," he added, as if that explained filing legal action against me. The papers blurred again as I reread the claims. Something about misallocated family funds and verbal agreements. Lies. All of it. But lies that, with the right signatures, had the power to rip away the biggest accomplishment of my life. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. The world narrowed to the echo of my father's words. "That house belongs to your sister." That wasn't a statement. It was a verdict. And somewhere under all that shock, something inside me cracked. Not in a weak way. In a waking up way. Because if my own parents were willing to drag me into court over something I paid for, what else were they capable of? What else had they already planned? I didn't know it then, but this moment, the courthouse, the betrayal, the paperwork trembling in my hands, wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning. I thought that was the part that would break me. But what happened after that changed everything in my family forever. Let me take you back to where this really started. Let me tell you about the 6 years that led to that courtroom. People think moments like mine happen overnight. One big blow-up, one shocking betrayal, one trip to the courthouse. But the truth. That courtroom was the final chapter of a story my family had been writing for years. 6 years to be exact. 6 years of grit, sacrifice, and silence. 6 years of doing everything right while being treated like I was somehow always wrong. My family has 3 characters. 4 if you count the version of me they preferred. Quiet, useful, invisible. Malcolm, my father, ruled the house like it was a military base. He didn't yell often, but when he spoke, his word was final. No questions. No negotiations. If he said the sky was green, you learned to describe the shade. Roslyn, my mother, wielded guilt like a second language. She didn't have to say, "You owe us." She could just sigh, look disappointed, and suddenly I'd be doing a week's worth of chores or wiring my sister lunch money. Just this once. And then there was Celeste, the golden child. Baby. The one with the loud laugh, the pretty face, the endless excuses. The one who always needed help. And somehow that help always came from my pocket, my time, my energy. I wasn't jealous. I was tired. When I turned 22, I made a decision. I wasn't going to live the life they carved out for me. The one where I worked, paid, supported, and stayed small. I wanted something of my own. Something I could point to and say I built this without anyone claiming credit. That something was a house. And so began 6 of the hardest years of my life. I packed lunches while everyone else ordered out. I skipped weekend outings. I turned down vacations, birthday trips, even office events because I couldn't justify spending a single unnecessary dollar. My eyes burned at night from staring at project deadlines after my shift at the engineering firm. Some nights I was so exhausted I'd fall asleep still holding my laptop. But every month, every paycheck, every sacrifice pushed me a little closer. Meanwhile, Celeste breezed through life like consequences didn't apply to her. New clothes, new phone, new car. One my parents co-signed while telling me to be patient. Your time will come. But they didn't know. My time was coming because I was making it come. The night I announced it, the night I told my family I finally had enough saved for a down payment, should have been a celebration. Instead, it became a warning I didn't recognize. We were sitting at the dinner table, the TV humming in the background, when I said it softly, almost shyly. I'm ready. I'm going to start house hunting. My father barely looked up from his plate. My mother blinked like she misheard. But Celeste let out a sharp laugh. Must be nice having that engineering salary, huh? She said it like a weapon. Like I hadn't skipped meals. Like I hadn't worked overtime until my bones hurt. Malcolm frowned at her. But not because she was rude. Because she wasn't subtle. Rosalind tried to smile at me, but her eyes were calculating, as if she was already rearranging something in her mind. I should have paid attention. I didn't. House hunting felt like coming up for air. Walking through each doorway, running my hands over window frames, imagining curtains and warm lights. It felt like a second life opening up in front of me. And then, I found it, a 2-bedroom brick home with a maple tree out front and sunlight that poured through every window like a promise. I fell in love before I even stepped inside. The day I signed the papers, my hands trembled. Not from fear but from pride. I did this. Not them. Not anyone else. Me. That I didn't know that moment, the happiest of my life, was the same moment a fuse was quietly lit under the foundation of my family. What I didn't know was that buying my dream home would light a fuse that would blow apart everything I thought I knew about my family. It started 3 days after I got my keys. I was sitting on my living room floor, surrounded by moving boxes, when my phone started buzzing non-stop. The boxes were still taped shut, half-labeled, stacked like cardboard towers around me. I had planned to spend the evening unpacking, maybe even make a cup of tea and sit in my living room for the first time, just breathing in the smell of fresh paint and new beginnings. Instead, my peace lasted exactly 12 minutes. First, the buzzing felt like a random glitch. A notification, then another, then a rapid-fire series vibrating across the floorboards. My phone lit up so fast it looked like someone was repeatedly turning on a flashlight. I frowned and reached for it. A dozen missed messages from my friend Mara. 3 missed calls. And 1 text at the top. Eloise, check your socials. Now. My stomach dropped. I opened the screenshot she sent, and for a moment, I genuinely forgot how to breathe. There it was. My sister's profile picture, her smug half-smile, and a post written in dramatic, tear-stained font. I can't believe my own sister stole Grandma's designated money to buy herself a house. I worked so hard for that future and she took everything. I don't know why family betrays family like this. Below it, hundreds of comments. People I didn't know calling me a thief. Monster. A snake in the family. One woman accused me of elder exploitation. Someone else wrote, imagine stealing from the dead. My entire body went cold that I didn't steal anything. There was no grandma's money. My grandmother passed away when I was 14, and all she left behind were recipes and a brooch. But Celeste. Oh, Celeste knew exactly what she was doing. She knew drama sold. She knew how to weaponize sympathy. She always had that my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Marat, it was Dad. I answered on the 3rd ring, my voice barely steady. He didn't even say hello. Where are you right now? He demanded. In my house, I whispered at a heavy pause. Then Malcolm exhaled sharply, like he was annoyed, not shocked. We need to talk. Your sister is devastated. You know that money wasn't yours to use. What money? I asked, gripping the edge of a moving box until the cardboard bent. There was no designated fund. We spoke to a lawyer, he interrupted. This isn't something we can just discuss. Your mother and I have decided to take legal action. For a moment the world tilted. Legal action? My voice cracked. Dad, this is my house. I paid for every cent of it. Another pause. A colder one, then my mother's voice chimed in from the background, dripping with guilt-loaded sweetness. Eloise, honey. If you really wanted a place, you could buy another one. Why take what was meant for your sister? Another one. Buy another one. Like houses were shoes. Mom, I whispered. I didn't take anything. I have documents, bank statements, savings logs. 6 years' worth. Rosalind sighed, as if I was the problem. We'll let the judge sort it out. And just like that, the call ended. No goodbye. No hesitation. Just a dial tone humming in my ear. I sat down in the narrow hallway of my new home, the boxes towering above me, the lights too bright, the silence too heavy. My parents weren't confused. They weren't misinformed. They weren't trying to understand. They were going to war, and I was the enemy. I didn't sleep that night. But by morning, I knew I couldn't face this alone. The hallway light stayed on until dawn. I kept expecting my phone to ring with an apology, a correction, something. But nothing came. Just silence. Cold. Heavy. Final to be sunrise. The house felt too big around me, every shadow looking like a threat instead of a dream. So I grabbed my laptop, my files, and a single overnight bag, locked the door twice, and drove to Mara's apartment. She didn't ask questions when she opened the door. She just pulled me inside, wrapped me in a hug that finally cracked something in my chest, and put a cup of coffee in my hand. Sit, she said gently. We're going to figure this out. And slowly, for the first time since the nightmare started, I believed her. Around noon, her boyfriend Ashton arrived from work early, still in his blazer, holding a folder like it was a precious artifact. I brought lawyer recommendations, he said. 4 of them. 2 specialize in property disputes. 1 is retired but still consults. And 1, he lifted a business card, is a bulldog. The bulldog was Vivian Hale. Her office was all glass and steel, perched above the city like she was watching everything unfold from a bird's-eye view. Her handshake was firm. Her voice, calm but razor-sharp. I told her everything. How I'd saved, how I purchased the house, how Celeste posted the accusation, how my parents were now claiming non-existent inheritance funds. Vivian listened with the focus of someone assembling a puzzle in real time. All right, she said finally, tapping her pen. First step. We build your defense around documentation. Every bank statement, every payment, every invoice tied to the house. Second step. We identify motive. There's more here than a simple misunderstanding. She was right. I just didn't know how right yet. For the next few days, my life became a blur of printing statements, sorting receipts, highlighting dates, and writing timelines. Vivian drafted a preliminary response to the lawsuit. Mara kept me fed. Ashton kept troubleshooting every legal angle. But the real breakthrough came from someone I didn't expect. Uncle Raymond. He called me out of nowhere, voice stern but warm. I heard what happened. Come to the house. I drove to his place that evening, expecting sympathy. What I got instead was truth. He slammed a notebook onto the kitchen table before I could even sit. Your father has been planning something like this for years. My heart stuttered. What? He nodded. Ever since your grandparents passed, Malcolm tried, twice, to get the will amended retroactively. Tried to argue that your grandmother intended to leave money to Celeste. He even met with a lawyer about it. Felt dizzy. He never told us, I whispered. He didn't want you to know, Uncle Raymond said. Your parents have always believed Celeste is the one who needs family support. But you're the one they think can handle losing things. The words cut deeper than any lawsuit. And then Aunt Miriam entered the room, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked exhausted. Eloise, she said softly, this wasn't sudden. Your parents have been trying to redirect resources to Celeste for years. They just finally found something big enough to take from you. The puzzle pieces snapped into place. The favoritism. The entitlement. The way my parents spoke about me, as if I was strong enough to be their sacrifice. Vivian was right. This was planned. But nothing prepared me for what happened next. The following night, I went back to my house to grab a few more things. Vivian had encouraged me to document everything inside, just in case I turned into the driveway and froze. Celeste was at my front door, trying keys. One after another, keys I had never given her. She looked up when she heard my car door slam, her eyes wide, not with guilt but with indignation, like I was interrupting her entry. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "It's my house," she snapped. "Dad said so." Something inside me, something fragile, frightened, overwhelmed, finally snapped. Not in panic, I in clarity, I in determination, because this wasn't confusion. This wasn't misunderstanding. This was invasion. This was theft. This was a line crossed so deeply it could never be undone. I called Vivian the moment I got back to the car. Her answer was simple. "Then we fight." And for the first time I wanted to. When I caught Celeste trying to break into my house with a key I never gave her, something inside me shifted. They wanted a legal war. Fine. They were going to get one. The courthouse smelled like old paper and disinfectant. Nothing warm about it. As I walked beside Vivian, every heartbeat echoed off the walls. The building felt colder than I expected, like a place where hope went to be measured, weighed, and judged. I clutched the folder of evidence against my chest, suddenly aware of how small I felt in the shadow of everything at stake. Vivian walked beside me with her usual long, confident strides. No fear, no rush, just quiet control. I found myself matching her steps without meaning to, like her steadiness could anchor mine. When we stepped into the courtroom, my breath caught, and my family was already there. But today, they weren't my family. They were opponents. Malcolm sat straight and stiff in his navy suit, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward like a soldier on duty. Rosalind dabbed beneath her eyes with a tissue for show, though she looked perfectly composed when she glanced around to see who was watching. And Celeste. She wore a soft pink sweater, minimal makeup, hair pulled into a deliberately innocent braid. She even had a timid little frown on her lips, a performance. Every bit of it. When Malcolm's eyes finally met mine, there was no flicker, no hesitation, just a cold, evaluative stare, like I was a stranger across a negotiating table. Celeste looked away immediately. Rosalind pressed her lips together, the hurt mother expression she'd perfected over decades. I sat down, feeling their judgment crawl across the distance between us, but Vivian leaned toward me and whispered, "This is just noise. We focus on the facts." And just like that, the door behind the bench opened. Judge Evelyn Carter entered. Everything about her commanded the room. The way she stood, the way she scanned the courtroom, the quiet strength in her gaze. She was in her 60s, sharp eyes framed by silver hair pulled into a bun. One tap of her gavel and the energy in the room shifted from emotional chaos to strict order. "Court is now in session," she said, voice steady and resonant, and so it began. The parents' lawyer, Bernard Langford, stood for the opening. He was tall, gray-haired and smooth, like a man who built his career convincing judges of things that didn't fully exist. "Your Honor," he began, "this case concerns a verbal family agreement regarding funds set aside for the younger sibling, Celeste. An agreement that the defendant, Miss Eloise Grant, chose to ignore." I felt heat rise in my face. There had been no agreement, no funds, no conversation, but Vivian placed a light hand on my arm. Her silent message clear: "Let him talk." "He's laying the rope, he'll hang himself with." Bernard continued smoothly. "This was not a dispute over ownership, but a violation of trust within a family. Our clients will testify that the house was always intended for Celeste. Always. Always." I almost laughed. But nothing came out. Malcolm was called first. He walked to the stand with the confidence of a man who had been waiting for this moment. One hand behind his back, the other resting firmly on the rail. "There was an understanding," he said. "A very clear understanding. Eloise knew the funds from her grandmother were designated for Celeste's future." Lie. Every word of it. He delivered it with such certainty that, for a split second, I wondered how many times he'd rehearsed it. How many times he had convinced himself it was the truth. Then Rosalind took the stand. My mother had always been a talented emotional manipulator. But today, she behaved like she was auditioning for an award, tears that weren't real. Sniffles she forced out between sentences. "We just want fairness," she said, voice cracking. "Celeste has struggled. She's had a harder time in life. Eloise knows that. She knows we talked about this. About helping her sister." I had to look away, because I knew this version of Rosalind, soft, wounded, trembling, was the same woman who once scolded me for being dramatic when I cried after working 3 consecutive 16-hour shifts. Then it was Celeste's turn. She walked to the stand with tiny, careful steps, radiating sweet helplessness. She glanced at the audience, then at the judge, as if begging them to see her as fragile. I just thought the house was for me," she said, voice trembling. "I make so much less than Eloise. I don't have her advantages. I've always known she'd help me one day." Advantages, like poverty and exhaustion, were perks. Celeste sniffed delicately. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I just need stability." I assumed she understood that. Her voice quivered exactly on CUIT was a performance. A flawless one, but Vivian sat calmly, no reaction, no visible frustration, just quiet patience. She was letting them talk. Letting them weave their story. Letting them dig their hole. Because when it was our turn, she would slice through every lie with evidence they couldn't touch. My family had taken the stand. They had twisted the story, painted themselves as victims, and placed the burden of blame squarely on my shoulders. But the truth was on our side. And Vivian knew exactly how to use it. Why parents and sister had their say. They played their parts perfectly. But now it was our turn, and we had something they didn't. The truth. Vivian stood with the calm confidence of someone holding all the winning cards. She rose slowly, smoothing the front of her charcoal suit, and approached the center of the courtroom like it was a stage she'd memorized. There was no rush in her steps, no anxiety. Just certainty, pure, sharp certainty. "Your Honor," she began, voice smooth but carrying, "the plaintiffs have given their narrative. Now we'd like to present the facts." The shift in the courtroom was instant. A ripple of attention, of awareness. Vivian called her first witness. Uncle Raymond. He walked to the stand with a grounded steadiness that reminded me of childhood, of safety before I learned what family politics really meant. He didn't look at my parents as he passed them. Not once. "Mr. Grant," Vivian said, "can you tell the court how your mother and father structured their estate?" Raymond nodded. "Yes, everything was split equally. 50-50 between Eloise and Celeste. That was their explicit wish." "Was there ever a designated fund for Celeste alone?" He didn't even blink. "No. There was no such thing." Bernard visibly stiffened. Malcolm's jaw flexed. Rosalind looked down at her lap. Vivian moved on. Did anything in the years following their passing suggest a change in this arrangement? Raymond inhaled deeply. "Actually, yes. Malcolm tried twice to get the will revised. Retroactively. Lawyers refused. It wasn't legal. There it was. The first crack in the story they'd built. A murmur swept through the courtroom. Judge Carter's brow lifted just slightly, enough to show she was very, very interested. Next, Vivian called Aunt Miriam. She sat down carefully, hands folded, voice soft but steady. "Mrs. Hale," Vivian said, "did you personally witness conversations about the inheritance?" Miriam swallowed. "I did. Malcolm wanted everything redirected to Celeste. He said Eloise was too independent and didn't need it." Rosalind flinched. Malcolm's eyes hardened into steel. "And how did the attorneys respond?" "They refused," Miriam replied. "They said the grandparents' wishes were clear. Equal distribution. Malcolm wasn't happy about that." Another stir through the room. All eyes shifted to my father, waiting for his reaction. He looked forward, face carved from stone. Vivian pressed on. "So to your knowledge, there was no designated money for Celeste? No verbal agreement? No family promise?" "None," Miriam said firmly. Vivian nodded, satisfied. "Thank you." Then it was my turn, and my heartbeat echoed in my ears as I walked to the stand, the weight of 6 years of sacrifice suddenly heavy in my hands. "Miss Grant," Vivian said gently, "please explain your financial documentation." I opened the binder, the one I'd spent late nights building. Color-coded tabs, highlighted sections, 6 years of meticulous deposits. "I saved every month," I said. "I lived below my means. I budgeted. I never took money from my parents. Not once. This house was fully funded by me." Vivian handed the binder to the judge. "Your Honor, this packet includes bank statements, wage records, transfer logs, and a breakdown of Eloise's savings plan over 6 years. All verified." Judge Carter flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from neutral to impressed. Bernard shifted uncomfortably. Celeste stared at the table. "And finally," Vivian said, her voice cooling to surgical precision, "we present the incident from last week." My stomach tightened. Vivian lifted a document. "This is a police report. Miss Celeste Grant attempted to enter Eloise's private residence using multiple keys. Keys she did not have permission to possess." Celeste jerked up. "That's a lie. Dad said it was my house." "Sit down," Judge Carter snapped, voice like a slap. Celeste sat, her face pale, hands shaking. Vivian continued, unfazed. "This incident demonstrates not misunderstanding, but entitlement. A belief that Celeste was owed something that legally and factually was never hers." Silence swallowed the courtroom. Every lie my parents told, every false memory they tried to construct, every accusation all cracked open under the weight of the truth. As Vivian presented the police report from Celeste's break-in attempt, I watched my sister's face go pale. The judge's expression shifted. This was it. Judge Carter held up her hand, and the courtroom went completely silent. Judge Evelyn Carter adjusted her glasses, scanning the documents spread across her bench one last time. Her expression was unreadable, but the air in the courtroom tightened, as if the walls themselves were waiting for her final word. Vivian didn't move beside me. She simply breathed, steady and sure. I tried to mirror her, but my chest felt too tight. When Judge Carter finally spoke, her voice cut clean through every whisper. "After reviewing the testimonies, financial records, and submitted evidence, I find no indication of any verbal agreement, written contract, or designated family arrangement regarding the property in question." Rosalind's hands twisted together. Malcolm's jaw pulsed. Celeste stared at the floor. Judge Carter continued, her tone sharpening. "Furthermore, the court is concerned about the attempted unauthorized entry into the plaintiff's residence. That incident alone raises significant questions about motive and credibility." I felt Celeste shrink beside her attorney. "The evidence overwhelmingly shows the property was purchased solely with the plaintiff's earned income. There is no factual basis for the defendant's claims." He paused. "Therefore, the case is dismissed." She glanced directly at Malcolm. "With prejudice." Her gavel hit once, loud enough to echo in the hollow space of my chest. It was over. Rosalind's face collapsed in disbelief. Malcolm surged to his feet like he was about to object again, but Bernard Langford pulled him back down with a firm hand. Celeste pressed trembling fingers to her eyes, tears sliding through her mascara. Vivian touched my arm lightly. "Breathe," she whispered. We gathered our things and stepped out into the hallway, but we didn't make it far before Malcolm's voice boomed behind us. "This isn't over, Eloise." Turn slowly. My father strode toward me with the same authority he used when lecturing us as kids, the same tone that used to silence entire rooms. "But not today. We're still family," he insisted, anger burning in his eyes. "You don't sue family. You don't embarrass family like this." I met his glare without flinching. "I didn't take anyone to court," I said. "You did. Over a lie." Rosalind stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Honey, we were just trying to make things fair. Celeste, she struggles. You know that. Maybe you could've." "No," I cut in softly, shaking my head. "You don't get to ask me to set myself on fire because she doesn't want to stand on her own feet." Celeste's face flushed red. I thought the house was supposed to be mine, Dad always said. And that's the problem, I said. You assumed. You felt entitled. But that doesn't make it true. Vivian stepped between us, her posture calm but firm. This conversation is over. I exhaled, turning away from the three people who had just spent months trying to tear my life apart. Their voices dimmed behind me. Each step down that courthouse hallway felt like shedding another layer of weight I'd carried for years. As we walked away down that courthouse hallway, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt something better, free. When I got home that evening, the sun was sinking behind the rooftops, painting everything in soft orange light. For the first time in months, my stomach didn't twist when I pulled into the driveway. The house, my house, sat quietly under the fading sky, warm and soft around the edges, like it was finally exhaling with me. No shadows waiting behind the windows. No fear curling in my ribs. Just stillness. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and the silence that greeted me didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a blanket settling over my shoulders. For so long, this place had been a battleground, every room carrying an echo of worry. Now it was just home. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang, and suddenly Mara was inside my kitchen, dropping a bag of takeout on the counter and pulling me into the kind of hug that squeezes the breath out of your lungs. I told you, she said into my shoulder. You were stronger than all of them combined. Ashton arrived right behind her, knocking lightly even though the door was open. He didn't say much, he never did, but the look he gave me was something solid, something like respect. You handled yourself today, he said simply. Most people wouldn't have. Vivian came a little later, still in her courthouse suit. Her hair slightly out of place from the long day. But her smile, steady, knowing, was exactly the same. Justice, she said, leaning against the counter, doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes it just makes room for you to breathe again. Let yourself breathe, Eloise. While we unpacked food, my phone buzzed. Uncle Raymond's name lit up the screen first. We're proud of you, kiddo, he said, voice thick with emotion. Your grandparents would be too. They believed in fairness. You honored that. Aunt Miriam chimed in right after him. They tried to rewrite the rules, she said gently. But you stood your ground. That matters more than the house. After we hung up, the night deepened, settling comfortably over everything. I wandered through the rooms, letting my fingertips trail across the walls, the door frames, the windowsills. Nothing looked different, but everything felt different. Lighter. Real. That I opened a few windows, letting the cool night air sweep in. It carried the faint smell of grass, faraway traffic, and something new, something like possibility. For the first time since buying the house, I felt no doubt, no fear, no question about whether I belonged here. I did. This was mine. Standing in my doorway that night, I understood something I'd been searching for my whole life. I realized something that night that would change how I saw everything. It wasn't the gavel striking, the courtroom applause, or even the eviction of lies that finally shifted me. It was the quiet, lingering truth that hit me in the soft glow of my living room that night. Family isn't defined by blood. It isn't determined by obligations, traditions, or shared names. Family is who stands beside you when the world seems intent on tearing you apart. I thought I had lost my family when my parents and sister turned on me. But in reality, I found it. Mara's relentless support, Ashton's quiet strength, Vivian's unwavering guidance, Uncle Raymond and Aunt Miriam's honesty. They were my anchors, my witnesses to truth and courage. They didn't demand perfection. They didn't expect compliance. They simply believed in me. That belief, more than any legal victory, felt like home. Looking around the house that night, I realized the bigger victory wasn't the brick walls or the keys in my hand. It was the voice I reclaimed, the boundaries I established, the life I took back. For years I had been silenced, shaped to please others, to bend under unspoken rules. Today I was not just a homeowner. I was my own person. I was free. The house symbolized more than property. It was proof that autonomy matters, that self-worth can't be stolen, and that standing up for yourself isn't a rebellion. It's survival. Each room, each window, Each corner now carried a sense of peace that I had never allowed myself before. I didn't just win a case. I won my life back. Now I want to hear from you. This story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's ever faced betrayal, unfairness, or the hard choice to stand up for themselves. I know how isolating it can feel when the people who are supposed to protect you turn against you. But you are not alone. That I want to hear your experiences. Have you ever had to fight for what's rightfully yours? Or stand up to someone who tried to rewrite your story? Sharing your journey can help someone else feel seen, understood, and supported. Drop a comment below and tell me, where are you listening from? Let's build a space where voices like ours are heard and validated. And if you want more stories about courage, justice, and reclaiming your life, don't forget to subscribe. If you've ever had to fight for what's yours, or stand up to people who tried to rewrite your story, you're not alone. Tell me where you're listening from in the comments. Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.